Welcome to the Plant Grow REIT podcast.
Welcome back to the Plant Grow REIT podcast. This episode today is going to dive into all things HR and or P&C, depending on what the preference is. And we've already chatted a little bit about the differences or lack thereof in our Q&A with S&A episode earlier. But today I am joined by Nick Gearen from Shift HR, who is an amazing strategist in the HR world, a leader in HR tech, and an award-winning one that we covered in the other episode. But thanks for joining me, Nick.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
We're just basically going to cover off some key items that listeners can take away in this year, 2026, for those who might be listening a lot later. So obviously, general advice disclaimer, please make sure that you get individual advice, and we will obviously have all of Nick's details and Shift HR's details in the episode description. So
give us a call.
Give it, and also we will plug Sidekick as well, just at the top. So before we dive into your insights and free strategies that you're going to give away today, do you want to tell us a little bit about Sidekick?
Yes, Sidekick is I'm reluctant to call it a HR compliance suite. It is more of a confidence building HR space where you can kind of go in and put in your details from a structure and business and operational perspective, and it will guide you through a number of different questions and learnings to help discover your employment landscape. And help you to determine whether you are meeting your obligations as an employer and whether your employees are getting the entitlements that they are entitled to. But the real value comes in once that's done. It will be always on monitoring for you and let you know when things change and what you need to change about it, and help you learn along the way.
Awesome. It sounds like it's going to be a really fantastic tool and resource for business owners and employers of many different sizes.
We hope.
Well, just to have that, first of all, even just in that upfront, putting in all the information to make sure that they are compliant and ticking all those boxes. But then what you've said about the monitoring, how as it goes along, if something changes, it will ping and it will notify, and it means that they don't have to be constantly in that like, oh my gosh, where do I need to be looking to make sure that I'm across all of these things?
Yeah, employment law, as anybody who's listening who has employees or who has been an employee will know, is and can be incredibly complex and grey area and ever changing. So to kind of have somewhere you can put everything, get a bit of support and advice for things that are changing, and be told when something has changed and you need to kind of align to it and how to align to it. We intend that it will just take so much pressure off of business owners so that they can focus on what they're doing best, which is their business.
Yeah, running the business. because
business.
They are in business to be a business owner, not to be a HR person and, the IT lady and the marketing person and all the other hats that they wear in an
the
average
receptionist
week.
and everything possible.
Just all of the above.
Yeah.
Well, we've already acknowledged always changing, ever-changing landscape. I know even just as an employee, a team member, that there are some pretty big changes that have just come into effect and continuing to take effect this year in 2026. So if you had to narrow it down, what would be sort of the top 3 HR risk areas that you sort of see either already in place or about to be in place sort of in the year of 2026? What should business owners be keeping an eye on?
Yeah. It feels so overwhelming and complex for businesses because the information is almost information overload. And the rules are present in many different documents and apply to different states or different, areas and different industries at different times. But the general sense at the moment is such a big focus on psychosocial safety. There's a lot of focus on wage and wage compliance across wage theft or super payments that are coming. And I expect that will continue as well into this year. We know that Payday Super is coming, and so that is going to be an area of change for businesses in their operations and cash flow that they need to consider. But the other thing I think as well is this unknown of right to disconnect, workplace flexibility, and how kind of an employee operates within your business as well. So it's such a big gamut. There's a lot of kind of areas that a business owner might consider a risk. But I think the scary thing is in whether you know the risk is present or not, or whether you allow yourself to feel so overwhelmed that you don't do anything about it. And that's where the risk becomes the risk.
Yeah, so it's never, as overwhelming as it can be, it's never a good strategy to stick your head in the sand, because
Yes.
I think we've seen that a lot of these regulators are saying that ignorance is not an excuse.
Yep.
And I know that you have acknowledged before that often when employers aren't doing the right thing, it's not malicious. It can just be an oversight or not realizing, but unfortunately, a lot of these laws and regulations, that's not going to cut it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, wage theft is a good example, and that is a terrifying term, and there's criminal liability on the line, and those things are really scary, particularly as a business owner when you're focusing on your business. To hear wage theft and criminal and penalty all in one kind of paragraph.
Yes.
But the reality is there's a lot of complexity around how that applies, and the difference between making a wage mistake and wage theft is intent. And what you intended to do. And it is not about ignorance and what you didn't know you had to do. Often, because intent is the differentiator, if you know about it and you continue to do it, then that might be wage theft.
Yeah.
If you didn't know about it, then that's ignorance. If you made a mistake, that's separate again. But the difference between kind of a $5,000 back pay because you missed something or you weren't sure, and a $500,000 back pay is really only time.
Yeah.
The longer it goes, the more risk it is. And so, while it feels scary and risky, it's probably not.
Yeah.
But knowing is better than not.
Yeah. So when the regulators come around and they knock on the business door and they say, right, you need to show us this intent. Like how would businesses prove their intent? Is it through having policies, procedures, things in place to make sure that they've got reminders to check things like award rates and things like that on a regular basis?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would take it a step earlier and have a think about the fact that if a regulator is coming and knocking on your door, then something is already wrong.
Yeah. Okay.
And, while of course all of those regulatory bodies that do proactive work, that more likely they're coming because they have a suspicion, or there's maybe a suggestion or a thought or a complaint or something like that. Regardless of whether it's proactive or not, knowing where you stand is what's most important.
Yeah.
And confidence in that is what's most important. And what they're looking for is to see that you are confident, that you're doing the right thing, and that you can prove that, whether that's wage theft or psychosocial hazards, or whether it's a regulator from the Fair Work Commission or from Work Health and Safety or any of those kinds of areas. They're looking for your proactive engagement in the process and your proactive understanding rather than the reactive response.
And what does that proactive look like?
I think it really depends on what the problem is.
True. But for examples, not an exhaustive list.
For example, the reason we started building Sidekick is because being proactive is incredibly difficult across all of those elements.
Because it's not just HR, business owners also have to be across tax and payroll and their own whatever industry codes they're working to.
Yep, totally. And so being proactive in terms of knowing what your obligations are as an employer, knowing what the employee's entitlements are, more so than the fluffy HR, but about what is the baseline standard and what are your obligations that you must meet. And then showing that you are meeting them, working towards improving them, not obligated to achieve them for one reason or another. And depending on the obligation will depend your industry and the team size and your business turnover. There are so many variables. But once you know them, then that's your baseline standard. And understanding that is really what regulators are looking for when they come knocking on the door. But further than that, they're looking for evidence. They're looking for evidence of that you know it, that you can prove that you know it and that it's right. And that if it's not right, you know that and you're remedying it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that variability that you touched on, like it is impossible to just give like a general statement on how things apply. And I know that from some of the things I've looked at from Shift HR, you guys definitely encourage businesses to not be using like off the rack HR templates and things like that because of that variance. So yeah, why is it so important that business owners are tailoring all of those different elements of HR to suit to their business specifically?
Yeah, it's such a funny one. I mean, we always say at Shift HR that we don't really just produce anything off the rack. And there are a couple of reasons. From a strategic HR perspective, if you take an off-the-shelf policy, for example, then it's not really working as well as it could for your business. It's not being as strategic as it could for your business. And it may not be right for the people in your business. Is it going to keep you safe? Is a different question. I think that for a small business owner who might buy a policy suite, it might give you a baseline level of safety. But when a regulator comes knocking and there was something in that policy that you didn't know, that didn't apply, that wasn't right, that was expired, and it wasn't right for your business, then you're back in the same space as not having one at all for a lot of the cases. And so it's not to suggest that off-the-shelf policies are bad. It's more to suggest that it could be better for you and you still need to know about it. Workplace flexibility is a really big one. It's a big and contentious topic for so many businesses.
Yeah.
So many business owners really want full-time in office or on location, and given the human experience in Australia, there is so much kind of demand for flexibility, and now there's this added element of conversations around what an employee is entitled to in terms of flexibility.
Yeah.
And there are also different levels within that and for the requests, and so that feels big and scary. And you can purchase or download a workplace flexibility template or policy, and it might say that people can work from home 2 days a week, and you might be comfortable with that as a business owner. But it might also stipulate something about the location of work, or it might not stipulate enough information about which location is included in the workplace, which, by the way, for small business owners, the home does count as a workplace. And you might have an incident and your policy doesn't cover you the way that you thought it did, or there might be a misunderstanding and you might make a termination and your policy might undermine your decisions in that way. And so being really aware of the kind of off-the-shelf things that you purchase and put in your business is more important than not having them at all.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. It's really interesting that you brought up, flexible working. Are you seeing a lot of conversations and challenges in that space? I know you work with a multitude of different businesses of varying sizes, but right up to like big global multinational companies. Is that sort of a conversation happening across the board?
Yeah, and I don't think it's a conversation that will ever stop. Historically, there's been a more formalized approach to workplace flexibility, and there's a certain protected attributes of people who are legally allowed to make a request for flexibility, and the process for considering that workplace flexibility is incredibly stringent because they have a protected reason to ask for it. That's become a little bit muddy over the last couple of years because everybody's had some sort of flexibility, and so the differentiator between who has a right and what the general right is and what does that mean for the decisions that you make every day, make it feel much more complex. And so, yes, it is a hot topic for small and big businesses alike. And there are roll-on effects for kind of the choices that you make. If you decide and you put in your contract that people are entitled to work from home 2 or 3 days a week, and you want to change that, that is a different consultation process and a different level of standard to if it is in a policy. Okay. And so that structure and the way that you do that is really important from the very beginning. So that's a long way of saying it is. It's a hot topic and there isn't one size fits all answer for that.
Yeah. I'm really curious because you've worked in this industry and in this space. Do you think that the expectation of hybrid work or flexible work is forever changed? That even if businesses are saying, oh, but we used to do it this way, is they're almost a feeling that the expectation of the workforce can shape the overall policies.
Yeah, it should. The expectation of the workplace should shape the way. The policy should really be the foundation of standard that we're driving. But if I kind of lift out to this industry HR view, yes, I do think that the shape of workplaces has changed, and I don't think that it's ever going to be as clear as it once felt.
Yeah.
However, I also think that the perspective on what good performance looks like as a business has changed with it. And so historically, there's been this view that visibility is really a part of your performance. If you're not visible and in the office or at meetings, then how could you possibly be doing a good job? Whereas now with technology and the experiences that we've had as humans and businesses, particularly in Australia, that's really challenged our standard on what performing looks like and who performs in what ways in different environments. And so I do think that moving on forward into the next few years, businesses will have to challenge their thinking around how they measure performance of their team, how they measure performance of the individuals that are delivering certain items. And that might mean that, well, I couldn't see you it's not really good enough anymore.
Yeah.
And that's a tricky one. That's a really tricky one, particularly when they have worked from home in the past.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's going to be a challenge for business owners, particularly in the small business landscape, to reconcile that. Operationally, it may just be your personal view.
Yeah, and that's true. And that can be really difficult to sort of separate. But there is a lot of things, I guess, in just the day-to-day running of a business that it might not be the way that you would do it if it were completely up to you. But we, the classic, we live in a society and someone's going to make the rules and we're going to follow them.
Yeah. And it's a tricky balance. It's always a balance of how it applies to you and your business and your industry and your team, and what's operationally needed for your business to succeed and how well you can kind of articulate that. But business ownership will always be such a personal challenge too, because particularly as your team grows, and this is such a fun part and a tricky part of HR, you are bringing people into your business that are so different to you in so many ways, and not everybody is going to operate the way that you operate. And how you maneuver that around your business structure will ultimately determine the success of your business in one way or another, or the level that your business kind of grows to. And so I think my encouragement for business owners is really challenge yourself on that. Really think about what can the business do versus how would I operate it if it was just 10 me's in the business versus 10 other people.
And you don't want 10 yous because you want a diverse skill set and interest level and things like that.
Yeah.
But I think that probably speaks a little bit to the importance of like values alignment when hiring and things like that as well.
Absolutely. Values is a really tricky one. It's also one of the most exciting parts of a business because for all of the ways that people operate individually, strategically, values play such a big part because they tell people how the business operates and how the work gets done. Not so much what work is getting done, but how we go about it. And it provides such a level of autonomy in areas where maybe visibility is low. And you give so much more trust to your team because you know that if they have to make a decision or a choice or a delivery on something for a client or for another team member, if they have those values at core, then they'll make the most right decision for the business every time, and they'll deliver it in the most right way every time.
Yeah.
And so values are really important because they underpin how it gets done when you're not there, and they underpin how the business works with each other outside of you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that's like the how things get done. But even when you were talking before about low visibility work and, it used to be the case that if you weren't seen to be there, bum on seat, that you weren't technically doing the job. Is the advice there just to be really clear about KPIs, like what actually is required, like regardless of whether you're sitting in the office, sitting at home.
Yeah.
The KPIs that need to be met are really what it comes back to, because then if you are having a performance issue or something like that, you don't fall into a trap of being like, oh, well, we didn't see you, so we're just assuming you're not
Yeah.
doing a job.
We always fall into this trap of HR feeling like paperwork. And
Yeah.
I keep going back all the time with everybody to the paper exists for a reason. And it's really kind of to help you with those conceptual questions of how am I going to drive the business?
Yeah.
So in this example, I think about something like a position description.
Yeah.
What I encourage clients to think about is what needs to be done? What does this role do? Not the person, the role. What does the role do? And what is their delivery responsibilities? Then it's what does good look like? How will I know it's a good job? What are the measurables which lead into those KPIs so that we know outside of me watching you and telling you how to do every single step, how do you know what needs to be done and what the good standard looks like? And then the values underpin the how. Do I go about that when things flex inevitably or change or something outside of that line 1, 2, or 3 is different? But then you can kind of put the person in over the top of that and say, okay, cool. Now, how does this work for that person?
Yeah.
And am I hiring the right person for this job? And does this person have the right skills, the right values alignment, the right experience to be able to do that job, rather than what small businesses often fall into is hiring people that have been along the journey for a long time and then trying to make things fit around them.
Yeah, like a square peg in a round hole situation.
Yeah, and that creates extra friction for you as a business later as it grows and people begin to have competing priorities against what works for them. There is always a way to kind of make the job work for the person, particularly if they are the right person. Yeah. And there's always a place in your business for the person that you think that there needs to be a place for. But structuring yourself so that you can kind of grow in that way and make sure that you're thinking about the business and how it delivers and then the people inside of it and whether they're doing it right and enjoying it and feeling engaged in the process is second to that.
Yeah. I think the way you structured that really provides a lot of clarity to something that when you, if you sort of just look at it without breaking it down, it feels really muddy and overwhelming and like everything blends in. But that is a really helpful way of doing it, of like really building it out from that position description, going like, what do we actually need to be done to drive the business goals? What does that look like? And then building up from there.
And it's a good example to kind of discuss even with small business owners because HR and growing or employing people for the first time for small businesses can be incredibly overwhelming, and you might see a template position description and think, why do I need that?
Yeah.
But actually it can be a really big business driver for you.
Yeah.
And it can be a really big tool and it's just one piece of paper.
Yeah.
And a little bit of thought. And if you have the kind of thought process and support and guidance to use those abilities to drive your business forward rather than as a piece of paper that you should have had to rely on later when there's a problem.
Yeah.
It can protect you in the later and it can drive you in the now.
Yeah. It comes back to what you were talking about before about like if in a case where a regulator is looking into things and wants that evidence, that piece of paper is that evidence.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important to have.
Yeah, it's a part of it, right? Those things form a view that you are considered in the way that you're approaching it and that you have an understanding of what's going on. And a regulator is less so going to be looking for a position description, but the example stands for anything else.
Yeah.
Whether it's a document that kind of shows that you went through and you did a pay audit every quarter or every year, or a document that kind of shows this is when we increased our super aligned with what was required. Or even in something a little bit more grey like psychosocial hazards, that here's some interviews that I did with the people that I work with to find out whether they feel concerned or not, and whether they even feel safe to tell me that. And here's what they said and here's what I did about it. Those kinds of things mean a lot to kind of understanding the shape of your business and the landscape of the way that people work in it. And will go a long way for making sure that you're doing the right thing in the future, even by accident.
Yeah, that's the thing. And at the end of the day, all of these steps taken, like I know people feel a bit bogged down in the paperwork, but I feel that in this case, the paperwork is working for everyone here. It's, yes, death by paperwork and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But the reason that it exists, and you alluded to this before, like it does exist for a reason, and it's to protect everyone. It's to protect you as the business owner, show that you are doing the right thing and taking the right steps. It's to make the team protected and happier and therefore more productive. It's to make everyone's life easier.
Yeah, and it means that you spend less time in the example of a position description. It means you spend less time with those 6 employees explaining what they're doing, or why it's changed, or what it is, or and it takes a little bit more forethought from a business owner to be able to kind of sit back and go, okay, I am here as a business and I want to be here. My current landscape I won't be able to do that. And a lot of businesses do this intuitively, where they go, okay, well, I need to hire 3 more people here, and I need to, but they skip the steps where they set that up properly for themselves and for everybody else, and they make it harder for themselves in the future, where people aren't clear, or they have a problem, or heaven forbid, a regulator is knocking on your door because it's not. It's caused another problem in clarity of pay or flexibility, and so all of those kinds of things we find in HR that are problems are generally the symptom of some sort of other thing that could have been done that would have helped you in the long run, and may have been an entitlement that you were supposed to give anyway.
Yeah.
That's such a broad and...
Oh, yeah, but it's so important. And clarity, it all comes down to clarity. Like you as a business owner, if you're adding a new human resource, to use the term, to your team, there must be a reason for it. Like, what goals are you trying to achieve by adding this position? What daily tasks are not being met that you need that extra person for? And then that makes it clear for you and how that's driving the success of your business. It makes it clear for the incoming team member, so they know what they're doing and what success looks like. And it makes it clear for the rest of the team as well to look at and go, oh, now we have a person fulfilling this role.
Yeah.
And tying it into psychosocial hazards, they feel more supported and hopefully less stressed. And it all blends into each other nicely.
It all really intertwines, particularly, I mean, the position description to psychosocial hazard journey is a real one, because psychosocial hazards can be, it really is just anything that might cause a negative impact on mental health for an employee at any point. And without kind of going into the rules of psychosocial hazard, we can talk about that after, but the reality is that an unclear job and a changing goalpost and feeling like my KPIs were here, but actually they were here, and now I'm in trouble because they weren't here and I didn't know that, is a really big risk for psychosocial hazard. And so while a position description, as an example, still is as much of a protection and clarity and guidance provider for everybody involved, it's also very strategic and supportive for you if we kind of do it in the beginning. And it's not to suggest that you can't make these tools work for you and your business. There are so many industries and businesses that, don't want to call it that, or don't like it to feel so prescriptive. And the intention is to make sure that people are aligned, not that it is prescriptive. And the intention is to make sure that people feel like they know what the expectation is of them, and that they feel comfortable with that along the way. And it's when they don't that things go wrong. Yeah.
And we've sort of opened up the psychosocial hazard can of worms now, so we can just lean into that. What are some of the biggest misconceptions that you're seeing or like running into with the people that you see in your space about that? Is there like a lot of concern, or are people sort of going, oh, actually, like this kind of makes sense, like we're sort of doing this anyway?
Yeah. I think, to be frank, there's a lot of concern from small business owners, because it's something that more often than not might put extra pressure on you as an individual business owner to operate in a way that feels unnatural to you. And that might be in much more consultation with everybody else. It might be less directive. It might be more directive. It might be any of those things. And traditionally, being a business owner means that you're the one that's in charge and calling the shots. And I think that that's a really hard hurdle for people to kind of jump over in some industries and some environments, because what these new psychosocial hazards rules mean is that you need to be much more proactive in the way that you learn how people are feeling about the work that they do and the way that they do their work and the environment that they are working in, and whether they feel that there is a risk or not. And that feels inherently out of control for a lot of business owners because it's outside of their decision and it's outside of their space. It really is up to the people that are in the organisation to feel safe or not.
Yeah.
There's this interesting kind of journey of work health and safety in workplaces where in the very early days, don't quote me on times, it's so focused on, well, this was an incident that happened. Now we have a problem, whether someone broke their leg or otherwise, and now we have a problem. We need to stop people from breaking their legs in the park again. And then it moved to, well, people are breaking their legs all the time, so why didn't we know that? We should be proactively looking at those things to make sure that people don't break their legs or their arms or something else or whatever happens along the way, and it become much more proactive. And similarly for psychosocial hazards, it is less so about the reactive, and the psychosocial hazard changes mean that you must be the same level of proactive for psychosocial risks in the workplace, just the same as you would a physical risk. And it's less tangible than a broken leg.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, well, one of the ones, we did our training on this recently, but that low job clarity was one of the big ones that was highlighted, that may be a surprise to some business owners. Similarly, I think people jump immediately to too much workload, but also on that list was not enough of people feeling underutilized, undervalued, and sort of like they're just sitting around directionless, aimless. What is a resource that you would recommend that people sort of, like, there's information everywhere for people, like as you've alluded to, like business owners, there's a lot of things to digest with these changes, but there are resources available, and if they're feeling that overwhelm and feeling the impulse to stick their head in the sand, what would you encourage them? Where would you encourage them to look instead?
It's going to sound so fluffy, but I encourage you to look inside of your own team for any of these things, whether it's psychosocial safety or something about people's pay. The most important thing for me as a HR operator is to understand that I feel connected with the team around me and that they feel connected to me, because that is a part of the risk management strategy. I want to know that they feel like they can share it with me in advance so that we can work on it together. Whether it is they feel like their pay is not correct, or whether they feel like Mary was too terse with them one day. I'm not sure. And so that's your biggest resource. Your biggest resource is the people inside. That will come with some tough reflection. And it will mean that you need to have a culture of people feeling open to talk to you about those things. And if you don't feel that people are being honest, then that needs to be an inside reflection for yourself as a business owner to try and understand why people don't feel like they can share that with you if you feel like something is wrong. And so in terms of operating, there's so many resources on all of the regulator websites.
Aside from Sidekick, obviously.
Aside from Sidekick. But ultimately, the biggest resource you have is your own team. Yeah.
And what are some of the ways, so I know that some of the ideas that have been thrown out about things about like having like a regular team survey that goes out that is anonymous and encourages people to speak up about issues that they may not be comfortable coming directly to people about. Is that a tool that's actionable? It's relatively easy to do. It's not too much overhead.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are so many different methods. I mean, and you could go down the rabbit hole of different ways that you could kind of collect that information, but definitely anonymous forms or engagement surveys is probably the more traditional term, but you can use those surveys if you're doing them to seek feedback anonymously on anything that you think in the business, and give people an open opportunity to share what they are considering and afford people the time of a conversation around it openly and meaningfully. Someone will learn and someone will benefit. The business will benefit overall because of it. Of course, you want to do all of those things in the right way, and there's so much information and standards around. There's so much information and standards available to you on Work Health and Safety websites or Fair Work Commission website. and that will give you the baseline. But the way you go about it is really open to you. It's really open to you, and your values might help to dictate that.
Yeah, probably. So for business owners that are sort of taking all of this on board, I think a common question is, and I know you've been asked it before, at what point do you suggest that a business owner goes, right, this is all getting a bit much just for me. I now have X number of employees. It's probably time to start removing this role from my plate and giving it to either a consultant or an in-house person, full-time, part-time. Is there, I know that there's obviously no set number of employees where that magically happens. But what is like a key turning point or a key moment where you feel business owners should reflect and go, oh, actually, maybe that's a sign that I shouldn't be doing this myself anymore?
The biggest kind of signpost for you is if there is anything you feel that you don't know, if there's anything you feel that you're not across, and if there's anything that you feel you're not 100% certain how that applies to you or your business or your team, that's not suggest that you need to hire a very expensive HR manager or consultant straight away, but that is a sign that you might need some support in trying to find whether that's correct or not. The other sign is if it feels overwhelming.
Yes.
I mean, and again, that's why we started Sidekick, because I think it's all well and good for small businesses to listen to this podcast and think, well, that's lovely, Nick, but you've been in HR for decades. And so it's very easy for you to say, and I agree. But how, there are more and more resources becoming available out there that will help you to get a sense of where things are at. Sidekick is one that's coming in the next couple of weeks. There are other small business-focused businesses that are utilizing some AI technology. I know of one called Humaneer at the moment, and they're kind of looking to start supporting small businesses as well around having a tool that people know is safe for HR and will give them an answer that's broader than just ChatGPT. If you find that you're ChatGPTing something, it's time to ask somebody for help.
So as a general recommendation, ChatGPT is not your HR advisor for your business.
No, definitely not.
You seem like you've heard some horror stories about that just based on your reaction to that alone.
It's so funny because I'm such a big believer in AI, I and the tool that it can be for businesses, but particularly in HR, I have seen how wrong it can get it.
Yeah, it's certainly something that, and like you said at the top of this episode, the rules and how they apply and in what cases they apply vary from not only obviously country to country, but then within Australia, state to state, industry to industry, business size, all of the above. How unless you are putting every single tiny minutia detail into ChatGPT, it's not going to spit out the right information.
And the context of kind of your employment landscape is really important. And the context of that person is really important. Because how it applies to them and how they respond best. We spoke about it a little bit in the last kind of podcast that we did, but this experience of looking at the unemotional version of what's in front of you and then injecting empathy back over the top of how that's delivered is probably such an important way that you will need to look at HR or employment landscape within your business, because there's that baseline of obligation and entitlement, but how that applies for you and how that's most successful for your business will be different every time.
Yeah, that's really interesting, the removing emotion, but then coming back with empathy. So it's like having, not having no emotion, not cold, distant, uncaring, but not being led by emotion. But
and it's incredibly important for even like tense conversations. Pay is a good one. Because people feel
strongly.
And it's so personal for people.
And also it's like we were almost raised in this way of like, oh no, don't talk about money. That's gauche. Don't do that. But
when it's like so values tied, like it feels like someone's put a value on you as a human. That's to a lot of people. That's how it feels, particularly if an employee asks for more money and then is told no, then that feels like a real values driver for an individual person's experience. And so that's where a good example of injecting empathy over the top of the legal requirement
Yeah.
will help to drive your business success and retain that person and keep them engaged. Because if you can have an honest and frank look at, okay, am I meeting my obligations? Is this person paid above what they should be paid? Am
And
I
that's
meeting
where the awards come in.
Am I meeting their entitlements? Are they getting everything that they're supposed to get? Am I looking at some of those things that I'm not obligated to do, but I know make a great workplace? Am I making a decision that works operationally in line with all of those things? And then am I considering the person at the other end for how I explain that to them and how I take them on that journey so that it is the most comfortable for them, so that they feel like they still want to be here, that I'm still incentivizing them and I'm not making them feel like crap along the way. Those things all benefit your business in the way that you do them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So we've covered a lot and obviously identified like some key areas like the new psychosocial hazard laws, the right to disconnect you touched on, and a lot of conversations happening about wage theft and things like that. If anyone's listening and that's a lot to take in, what would be like one very easy actionable thing that they could do tonight to take one small step in the right direction for them?
I think that the first step of action is to ask yourself, how comfortable am I that I know and feel comfortable, that I understand what changes are coming and what that means, or whether I feel not confident or even scared about some of those things. And then try to get yourself across information that might help you to understand. The most trustworthy and most helpful resources are the regulatory body ones that exist for a reason. And they get more and more resourced every day. And they're very helpful at helping to break things down in a way that makes sense for your business. At the point where you think, yeah, but we're a bit different, the next best thing you can do is to build your advisory team in some way, shape, or form. And then I think the final actionable step is looking at what you think you have within the business, formally or informally, that makes you feel confident. Because talking to somebody who's experienced about that and can help you to kind of look at that from a strategic point of view will make you feel so much more confident and so much more safe. And then the last thing is ask the team around you what they think and how they feel. Ask the people that you trust in your business about what their experience is and whether there's anything they are concerned about or nervous about. And then you all get to work together on it. Yeah.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing all of your insights today. We will include obviously the details for Shift HR and for Sidekick in the episode description, and we will also include the link for your Q&A with SNA episode as well, because there was a lot of good HR overview there as well, and like dived a lot into how like why HR is important and why it's not the stick. And why it's, you know, almost like an in defense of HR, because I think the way you put it in that episode was really good and really would be really beneficial as an addition to this.
Oh, good.
Because it was a lot about how it is strategic. It's not, it shouldn't be feared or ignored. It can be a very strong strategic tool. Any business owner.
Yeah. And it can, for a small business owner as well, it can be something that makes you feel really confident in yourself. It's scary to get started, but it's
the
not
case
impossible.
with everything.
That's right. That's right. And it will make you feel better in the end.
Yeah. Thank you
Just
so
like
much.
a good medicine.
No, I completely agree. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your insights. And thank you to the listeners for tuning into this episode of Plant Grow Reap. We will be back in 2 weeks with a new episode, and we'll talk again soon.